Brakatia Hawo, Brakatia Hoshai, Brakatia Hawo, Brakatia Hoshai, Brakatia Hawo, Brakatia Hawo, Bashim Yahoshai, Bahashim Racha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the Pre-Shimon, this week's topic is going to be entitled The Conflict Continues in the Middle East. Alright, so, it's back on, right? It's been on and off, peace again, peace talks with Iran and Israel and the United States, and pretty much what's going on over there in the Middle East, which we know through the Spirit that's what's going to escalate all the way into World War III, right? How do we know that? This is the book of Jeremiah, chapter 49, verse 20. It says, "Therefore, hear the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Edom." Edom, Idumea is Esau. Edom is the so-called white man today. This is why we say so-called. So-called means commonly called white. No one on this earth is white. Nobody on this earth is black. But words carry a vibration. When you think of white, you think of purity. You think of clean. And when you think of black, you think void of light, right? Darkness, absent. So these were names, again, the so-called white man put on himself and us to carry a particular vibration, all right? Really, when you look at the so-called white man, he's red, right? Pinkish. They talk about rosy cheeks and these sorts of things. That's because, the lack of pigmentation has the blood come forth towards the face. So, and that's what the Edom means. And in fact, like Joshua, Esau, means wasted away is he, and that wasted away is the pigmentation, right? So that's Edom. So as that he hath taken against Edom, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. It says, surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. The least of the flock is the so-called Jew today. Again, I'm saying so-called because, really they're Amalek. Okay, Amalek is a tribe. So Esau, I believe, had 4 sons, which eventually turned into 12 dukes. It was 5 sons. It has to be 5 sons because Esau was. It's either 4 or 5, so lock in my memory. But how many sons the father of the Rothschilds had, that's the same amount Esau had, because that was him coming back again, having those 4 sons. But eventually they became 12 dukes. But just like how you have 12 tribes, you have different sects of Edomites from different fathers. All right, one of those that came out of Edom was Amalek, and that's the so-called Jew today, the Amalekites. They're the ones that's really causing all this shit to go on in the Middle East, Gamal Nasser, in 1952, former president of Egypt, said there could never be peace in the Middle East because the Jews left black, came back white. The people over there in the Middle East, they know the history, okay? Just like how we have our chronicles, they have their chronicles. They know who they are in the Bible. They know that they're Ishmael, all right? And they know that the true children of Israel are you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, okay? And no one likes them in that land. In fact, the land has resisted them, which, the scriptures tell you, if you don't keep the law, statutes, and commandments in the land of Israel, the land will fight back against you. You can read about that in the book of Kings, right? When they were doing deportation and importation during the Syrian captivities, right? So, the land is fighting back against them, and they're stirring all this mischief, okay? So what's happening? Every time they call themselves having a so-called peace agreement with Iran, okay, a part of that peace agreement is they want Lebanon Lebanon and Yemen to be a part of it. And the thing is this: most of these wars today are not fought outright. They use a lot of proxies because they don't want to escalate things into World War III. What's a proxy army? A proxy army is someone that's going to fight and do the battle for you, okay? But you're not really doing it yourself. you could fund them to get the job done for you. The proxy groups of Yemen, or the Houthis, and the proxy groups of Lebanon is Hezbollah. They're saying in this agreement, the agreement doesn't cover them. So Israel would attack them, they would attack them back, and then the beef is back on, you know. And there's no taking the Strait of Hormuz, because even if you, let's say, take the strait from the IRGC, which is separate from the Iranian military, because you have the Iranian army and then you have the IRGC, which again, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is completely separate. They have their own navy, they have their own everything separate from the Iranian army. And they have completely decentralized. So the thought is, we're going to kill the top. So they killed the Supreme Leader Khamenei. All right, but guess what? His son came back in charge, and they can't really pinpoint who's the head of this thing. And because they've war gamed for over 20 years, preparing themselves for this situation that will start off with the United States. And these people, there's no stopping them. They believe that if you kill them, guess what? That's glory. They're going to have their 70 virgins. So from an ideological standpoint, they have no problem dying, they have no problem going. And the fact that the United States, even though the United States is the largest military in the world, is a very expensive military, right? So the warfare that's being fought right now is kind of benefiting those on the Iranian side, because they could use drones, which are about $20,000, wherein the United States is doing things like carpet bombing and using ballistic missiles, which could range from Tomahawk missiles, which could range from 1.1 to some of these things even $2 million. Is a lot of spending, and these things you can't pump them out like bullets. These things sometimes take a year to make. So they're doing well. They're having no issues keeping this thing going. You know what I'm saying? So, and guess what? They're also saying Iran has nuclear missiles. Iran does not need nuclear missiles. I've been saying that for so many years. As you can see, they control the Strait of Hormuz, which is responsible for most of 20 to 25% of the world's oil. Not only that, a little bit more to the south, you have the Strait of Bab, right? Which, again, you control that. You're controlling a lot of oil imports. You see? So, from a strategic standpoint, Iran is fine. And plus, if you want to block off or create a blockade by the Strait of Hormuz, that's just the south of Iran. On top north of Iran, you have the Caspian Sea. So, which Russia could still aid Iran via the Caspian Sea through places like Azerbaijan and other different countries up on top of that region. So like I said, they've prepped. This thing is going to keep going, and the only reason it hasn't escalated into World War III and talks about in terms of missiles being launched is because the RFID microchip has to get mandated. The RFID microchip is the mark of the beast that we read about in Revelations, the 13th chapter, the 16th verse on down. That will be mandated, and if you take that mark in any part of your body, you are not of the elect. You're slated for destruction. Okay, and if you're not warning the people about that, you either sold out to Satan or you're just not of the elect. Okay. Joel 3:1, it says, "For behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem." So Judah and Jerusalem means the southern kingdom and northern kingdom. Bringing back our captivity is very similar to what the Lord said in the book of Isaiah, the 14th chapter, the first verse, meaning he's going to bring us back captive to him, because right now Jake is just completely bugged out. Verse 2, "I will gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat," Yahushaphat, which is the Most High's decision. The Most High's decision is judgment. Again, this is all in the Middle East. "And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land." Yeah, so really they're fighting over a land that's not theirs, okay? The so-called Palestinians, all right, again, I'm saying so-called Palestinian because Palestinian, it really goes back to Philistine, okay? And those people are not the real Palestinians. The real Palestinians are Africans, all right? The Philistines are Philistine is a Greek word, all right, which I believe it goes back to like purple people or purple, all right? Because in the ancient world, purple was associated with royalty, and you had to be very rich to have purple garments. Well, not very rich, but it costs you bread. Just like how people rock gold and shit. So the Philistines in Tyre were known for having that purple, because you had to squish this particular this animal, I forgot what it's called, to get to have it, you crush it and it makes it die, and it was like a rare thing to do. So they had that in abundance in that region, and then the Greeks called them the purple people, I believe, which is off the Philistines. So those are Africans, all right? The people over there that's calling themselves Philistines right now, the Arabs just mean a mixture. So you see a mixture of Elamites and Israelites. So none of those people over there belongs to neither of them. They part up the land of Israel, but it doesn't belong to them. The real people of the Lord are really scattered out here in the world, mainly in America. That's you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And when we get brought back into our land by the Lord, not by taking a plane, by Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua via the chariots, then there shall be peace in the Middle East. It says, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So our people are scattered. You're going to have Israelites look like so-called white people, look like so-called Chinese people, but their spirit, it will be that of a Jake. You got people you got guys like Eminem. Eminem's a Jake. He looks white, right? You name it, man. It's at this point, when you become spiritual, you could talk to a lot of Italians, all right, the Sicilians, all right, the ones on the south, not really the northern ones, the Sicilians, a lot of Jake there, right, the history with the Moors. So you could tell when you're talking to a Jake. A lot of Irish people, so-called Irish people, you know what I mean? You can know when you're talking to Jake, their spirit will be different. Jake got a different spirit on him, the spirit of the Lord. Verse 3. All right, Bruce Lee, another one. Got Bob Marley. Bob Marley looked like an Israelite, but his dad looked like a so-called white man. But Bob Marley is an Israelite, man. Bob Marley is not an Edomite. Verse 3, it says, and they have cast lots for my people. Right, so what do it mean when they put us into slavery? Casting lots, just like an NBA draft. You drafting, Jake. It's the same shit. During slavery, except you wasn't getting no $1 million contract. Your ass was getting put to work. They have cast lots for my people and have given a boy for a harlot, meaning they were selling, prostituting males and females. All right, they were doing a lot of atrocities to our people. It says, for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, and that they might drink. Yea, and they have done with me, yea, what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon? Speaking of Philistines and the Africans, that's them, Tyre and Zidon. It says, and all the coast of Palestine. See, it just let you know right there, Palestine. See, will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head. And that's another interesting point, that we're not Africans, okay? The so-called Africans had a part in the triangular slave trade. It was Africans sold us, all right? The Ishmaelites made the ships, and we got bought by the so-called white man, okay? Because ye have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly and pleasant things. Again, that's going into Jake, which the scriptures tell you Jake is likened unto gold and precious silver to the Lord. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Grecians. Again, the Grecians are who? The so-called white man. That ye might remove them from their border. And we got removed from that part of the world and brought over here. You see? Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither ye have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. So all you nations are going to pay for what you did to our people. All right? There's more there. There's more there on that scripture. Maybe I'll continue this lesson tomorrow, but I've approached my destination. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rachah Kodash. That belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone True Well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there. You Akim to Zadakim. That do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.